So, drop your math class. Pause for dramatic effect. Avert eyes from Ms. Brunel. Away from administration and fear the wrath of Mr. Root. Yeah, shock value, or it would have been if you all would have known the topic already. The first day I taught Grapes of Wrath, I told the class they were prostitutes in the eyes of Karl Marx. And on the very first day of IBAP English, when we watched Milan, we talked about phallic symbols. She carries a big sword after all. The idea, get them listening to you in any way possible, and once they start paying attention, then get to the content. And it works. So again, drop your math class. Now, Mr. Root, put the stapler down. I am in no way arguing against the importance of math education. I took 4 years of high school math before the end of my junior year. I took college calculus at an actual college. My favorite part of high school was no-line geometric proofs. I use algebra every day, and I think geometry can explain fundamental truths of the universe. Give it up for the golden ratio. I am the son of a chemical engineer who, as I know from the time I was about 5, missed only one question on his math SAT test, and it was about a 5, 12, 13 right triangle. I never remember my father teaching me anything about literature or sentence construction, but I can remember his lesson on Sokotoa. I am a better person because I took high school math. Many of our students are better people because they take 4 years of high school math. You are not the one talking about. You don't need to drop your math class. Then who should? Now, it is very true that I think most students in American high schools do not need 4 years of math. Algebra and geometry, no debate there, and I think our best math teachers should be teaching those levels. And I do realize that for some students, 4 years of math is necessary to reach proficiency in algebra and geometry. But as much in algebra and geometry have benefited me in countless ways, calc and trig have done me little direct good since I left high school. I was in that curvilinear form that Mr. Rennell talked about, but I didn't understand the calculus when I was 0.E3 or whatever it was. But the person who designed the drill and the drum major did, and thank God for that. I remember Sokotoa, and in calc the word derivative came up, and there was that epsilon thing, and I think something called a limit. But the problem-solving skills it taught me, right? I learned to be a better problem solver? Maybe, but my college logic class taught me those, and to be honest, I think my English classes taught them even better. You don't think diagramming a sentence is a problem-solving skill? Or parsing lines of alternating iambic trimeter and tetrameter? Or figuring out just what the sound of the fury was actually about? Yes, math can teach problem-solving skills, but so can marching band or history class. And they can do it in ways that have clearer cross-curricular application. Maybe I'm biased. No, wait, I am biased. Maybe that means my opinion is irrelevant. Just another voice with its own agenda trying to shout the loudest to be heard. Maybe you shouldn't drop your math class, or maybe I shouldn't be telling you to, whoever you are. So that's all drop your math class is, a meaningless shock statement, a simple incoherent shout. Well, shock value, yes, meaningless, no. Like most shock statements, it's meant to draw attention to a larger issue than the words it professes. It's about more than simply dropping math classes, or English classes, or world language, or whatever. And it's meant to draw attention to a larger, bigger, more important you. Maybe my voice is the wrong voice. Would Mr. Roots be better, or Mr. Alexander's, or whoever? Why do we have 4 years of math? Who is telling us to pick up those math classes? It wasn't a math teacher's decision, or principal's. They weren't the ones who told us to take that 3rd and 4th year of math, and they're not the ones I'm asking to drop it now. Anybody who's been in my TOK class, past roll on the first day, knows that I believe we have to deconstruct our notions of the education system, and I'd like to thank Mr. Root for getting us started on that. Education is hardly about the pursuit of knowledge anymore. It is about socialization and the inculcation of values. What we teach is not a reflection of what knowledge is innately good. Little knowledge is innately good or bad, for that matter. What we teach, what you are required to learn, what you are told you can't drop, is a reflection of what knowledge is valuable within a given society. 4 years of math is 1/4 of your required curriculum. It reflects that math knowledge is a high priority for our society, for the you that is telling us what classes to take. So why is math valuable? What does it do for us? Well, for some of us, it is the best class ever. allowing us to explore a world with a universal language that allows generations to communicate across time and space. It allows us to tinker and build and forms the foundations for all the sciences. It's fascinating in its simple complexity. For others, it is tedium. It is kill and drill and forgotten lessons about limits and sigma. Why does everyone need these 4 years? What social value does it reflect? Mr. Alexander was correct. We do need better engineers and inventors, to be sure. And engineering and other careers, of course, require 4 years of math and beyond. But surely we don't expect everyone to have one of these careers. Why are we focused on math-based careers? Why do we say that you need that skill for the future, but not the ability to parse a sentence, which you will do for every day of the rest of your life, regardless of your career? Or make a bracelet? Or conduct the band? Or be an architect? Now, I'll be the first to admit that each of these skills does involve math, but they don't all involve the knowledge that comes from years 3 and 4. Why does everyone need to pick up those last 2 years so they can maybe someday have a career in a math-based field? Why are colleges moving away from offering majors that lie outside of math and sciences? They aren't cutting departments, to be sure, but they are cutting majors. Why are so many voices in society calling on colleges to eliminate majors like philosophy that lack a direct career path? Or at least a path to careers our society values? Why is it math and the science based on it that serve as the college's bragging points, that get the funding and the headlines? Well, a lot of it comes down to good old competition. Whenever someone compares the state of American education to other countries, they look at 3 areas of testing: math, science, and reading, as measured by something called the PISA survey. And the reading is constantly moving towards more nonfiction, real-world pieces, so don't tell me literature gets equal billing. And we as Americans don't score as well as we used to. So maybe that's why. But why should we care if Singapore, or China, or Finland? Yes, Finland ranks higher on the PISA than we do. Why does this competition matter? Why don't we measure our knowledge of history or civics? Why is math and the science it is based on deemed so valuable? Well, simply, as much as some people would like to tell you otherwise, the world is still about stuff. The stuff that math and science careers produce. The stuff that our nation may not produce anymore, but at least we want to design the stuff that they can make in those nations on overseas factories that we see on Nightline. Now, I like stuff. Don't get me wrong. And I am glad that we have mathematicians and engineers, scientists and the like, whose expertise in these areas has given me all this stuff. But I don't need to make this stuff myself. And besides, what made this country great isn't our ability to make stuff. We did not invent the automobile. We did not invent the CD player, or fireworks, or the camera. America's greatest contribution to the world is things, it's ideas. The assembly line, democracy, fantasy football. But when we prioritize math the way we do, we're emphasizing something that is more tangible, something easier to measure, something where accountability is easy to determine. And there's a certain comfort in that. Math prepares us for careers where we produce tangible results, not abstract concepts or skills. And maybe we should have such a focus. Maybe that is the way to go. But remember how I mentioned that Finland is better than us on that PISA thing? They're third in the world, which is actually down from their first place standing in 2010. And they've done it without requiring 4 years of math. In fact, they don't require anything national, and they have no standardized testing. They do test a small sample for the PISA, but they only have one standardized exam in all of their schooling. Finland focused on cooperative learning. The Finnish writer Sapakie said, "Real winners do not compete." By removing competition, and ironically by an accident that they even acknowledge, they ended up being more competitive. As they dropped their math and science and English and whatever else class that they said they needed and put education back in the hands of teachers and students and not in the hands of politicians. But then again, in Finland, teaching is a highly prestigious, well-paid career that attracts some of the best young minds, but I digress. And it is true that I could say, drop your English class. English is only the study of literature, which is a waste of time for many who will remember the Scarlet Letter as poorly as I remember Sokotoa. Or drop your history class, since we need more civics education anyway. Or drop band because we need more art theory and appreciation and less performance. But these areas do not receive the same emphasis as math and science. If more districts do as a district in Georgia has recently done and require all students from kindergarten to 12th grade to take Mandarin Chinese because they believe it is necessary for all students to take it for us to be competitive in a global economy, I'll be up here in a year or two saying drop your Chinese class and start with some shock value joke about the spreading of communism. Yes, we will need people with Chinese language skills to keep our businesses competitive as China gains a greater and greater understanding in our world. But we don't need it for everyone. And surely, school is about more than competing with the Chinese. But for now, the disease of hyper-competitiveness is not seen around the world seen around the country in our world language classes, but it is in math and science. We require 4 years of math not to encourage the creativity that Mr. Alexander and Miss Howe will speak to, but to master competencies. Competencies that do not lead to inventions, but to careers. It is these two areas that we have been told we must pick up because they are the basis of our future success. And in doing so, we have misidentified what success actually is. If these math and science classes were making our students happier, as cheesy as that sounds, with themselves, with education, heck, even with those future careers we're supposedly preparing for, I could probably live with this. But they just aren't. On survey after survey that measures happiness, Americans rank nowhere near the top. And it isn't those math countries that are happier than we are. It's Denmark, number 1. It's Switzerland, it's Austria, it's the Bahamas, it's Canada. The United States comes in at 23rd, Singapore is 53rd, China is 82, Japan is 90, South Korea is 102nd, Finland is 6th. Even if math and science classes were preparing us for a better career, even if they were making us more competitive with the world, it wouldn't matter. We prioritize those classes because they reflect our emphasis on productivity and consumption as if they were equal to happiness, as if the final measure of a country was its GDP. Yes, GDP matters. But our education system should aspire to higher goals than that alone. It should aspire to a citizenry that is happy above all else. And the productivity that may or may not come from more math and science does not equal happiness. So what to do then? What is the solution? Well, first, don't drop your math class. The true tragedy about selling the 4-year requirement is that it turns math into simple career prep and loses the complexity and beauty of proofs and non-Euclidean geometry, and the pursuit of one of only 2 areas of knowledge that lives in a perfect world outside the corrupting influence of man. Only it and philosophy do not require any connection to the real world to exist. Only these 2 areas can exist in ideal form, where all oranges and democracies are exactly the same shape and size. Math is valuable. We need people to make stuff and so much more. But we will not beat Japan by sheer force of numbers. We don't need more engineers. We need better engineers. The nature of the 4-year math requirement is the result of larger forces. It is not a disease, but it is a symptom of one. Of a disease where education is not an exercise in knowledge, but in career prep. So don't drop math or anything that allows you to be creative in the ways that you find fulfilling. There is and always will be a career in everything. And it is in those who take classes for pleasure that they will find a career and happiness going hand in hand. If we drop our math class, or at least if we enter the discussion of why we should be allowed to, we will be returning to knowledge that fulfills a student's thirst for that which will make them happy, will provide true personal fulfillment, will see us catch Finland on the PISA and Canada on the happiness scale. Take the math you need to survive. Drop that which you don't. If we emphasize English or history or art or world language in the same way for the same reason, I'd say drop those too. But we don't. And that is why in the end, the suggestion to drop your math class should not be so shocking after all. So when you have a chance to be part of the conversation to shape our nation's values, to shape what ideas we as a society will value, to shape the educational system that reflects those values, whether as a politician, an educator, or a parent, when you can decide what education will look like in the future, put the focus back on creativity, knowledge, ideas, the sharing of info, and know that the careers will follow. Tell them to drop your math class. Work against the disease of hypercompetitiveness. Take robotics. Take the classes that allow you to be creative and happy. Thank you.